The silence after the explosion was louder than the blast itself. Pieces of metal floated through the void, glowing red from the fire. The great royal ship eclipsed dawn, once the pride of the Zinthari Empire, was now nothing but a broken shell drifting through endless blackness. Inside the shattered corridors, air hissed out through cracks. Flames flickered and died in the vacuum. Alarms still blinked uselessly on broken panels. Bodies of guards and nobles floated weightlessly, faces frozen in shock. In the lower deck, under a collapsed beam, a man stirred. His wrists were chained, his clothes torn, and his back burned from shrapnel. His name was Rian, a human slave, and property of the Zinthari royal house. He coughed, trying to breathe in the thin air. Pain shot through his chest, but he pushed the beam aside with trembling arms. Every bone in his body screamed to give up, but something deeper forced him to move. When his vision cleared, he saw the truth. The ship was dying. The artificial gravity was flickering. Oxygen levels dropping. The emergency core was glowing red, seconds away from meltdown. If he didn't escape soon, there would be nothing left but dust. He stumbled through the hallway, stepping over the twisted metal and lifeless bodies of alien guards. Their golden armor still gleamed even in death. Ryan's eyes were empty, but his mind burned with one thought: freedom. If the Queen was dead, his chains meant nothing. Maybe this disaster was his chance to finally live. He reached the escape bay, but it was gone, ripped open by the blast. Only debris and fire. He cursed under his breath and slammed his chained hands against the wall. Then, he heard something, a faint voice, weak, struggling through static. Help. Someone, help. It came from the upper deck, the royal chamber. Ryan froze. That voice was impossible to mistake. He had heard it only once before, when she gave the command that enslaved his colony. The Queen herself. Queen Aurelia, ruler of the Zinthari Empire, cold, perfect, and untouchable. He looked toward the sound. His instincts screamed to run the other way. Let her die. Let them all die. They had taken everything from him. His family, his freedom, his humanity. But then another sound. A weak cough followed by silence. Something inside Ryan moved. Not forgiveness, not pity. Something older, human instinct. No one deserved to die like this, trapped and alone in the dark. Damn it, he muttered, and turned back. He climbed the wreckage toward the throne chamber. The walls were split open, exposing the stars. Flames drifted like ghosts. The royal banners, once shining red and gold, were now torn and blackened. And there, under a fallen column, lay the Queen. Her once majestic armor was cracked, her crown broken. Her body was twisted awkwardly. Her eyes opened weakly as Ryan approached. "You slave," she whispered. "Help me." Ryan stood there, silent. The chains on his wrist clinked softly. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he sighed. "You've got a lot of nerve, Your Majesty." She didn't answer. Her breathing was shallow, almost gone. Ryan looked around. The walls were unstable, the floor splitting apart. He had minutes before the entire deck collapsed into the void. "Fine," he said, shaking his head. "I'll regret this." He shoved the debris aside, grunting as he lifted the heavy beam off her. His muscles screamed. His hands bled. But slowly, painfully, he freed her body. When he tried to move her, he realized something. Her legs weren't moving. She was paralyzed, her eyes met his. "I can't feel anything," she whispered. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then I'll feel for both of us." He ripped a torn royal banner from the wall and wrapped it around her to keep her warm. Then he found a half-broken hover sled, damaged but still working. He placed her carefully on it and chained it to his own waist. As the deck shook violently, he began pulling her toward the outer hatch. Every step was torture. The sled scraped against the floor, sparks flying. The Queen coughed, whispering, "Why? Are you helping me?" He didn't answer. He only pulled harder. The corridor behind them exploded, fire chasing them like a living beast. Ryan's legs burned as the shockwave threw him forward. He shielded her body with his own as metal shards sliced the air. Finally, they reached the outer hull. The stars stretched endlessly beyond, black and silent. One small emergency airlock remained intact, cracked but functional. Ryan dragged her inside. The door barely sealed. The oxygen meter blinked red. 10%, 8%, 5%. He leaned back against the wall, gasping. The Queen's breathing slowed. She was fading. "Stay with me," he said quietly. I didn't drag you out here to let you die. Her lips trembled. Why? He looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the crown, beneath the arrogance, she was just another soul fighting to live. Because no one deserves to die in chains, he said. Her eyes softened. Just for a second. Outside, the wrecked ship began to break apart completely. The last light from the burning engines cast a crimson glow over them. Two enemies trapped together in the dark, bound by fate. Ryan looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, maybe, was freedom. But for now, he had one mission: keep her alive. He didn't know why. He only knew that something in his heart refused to abandon her. As the hull trembled again, Ryan whispered, "Hold on, Your Majesty. We're not done yet." And in that dying ship, a story of survival and redemption had just begun. The cold was the first thing Ryan felt when he woke. The air was so thin that every breath burned his lungs. Above him, through a cracked viewport, the stars looked like sharp ice, close enough to touch, yet mercilessly far. He sat up slowly. The small airlock they'd sealed themselves into had barely survived the blast. The oxygen warning still blinked red. A trail of frozen blood marked where he had dragged the Queen the night before. Queen Aurelia lay on the floor beside him, still wrapped in the torn royal banner. Her skin had gone pale, her eyes half closed, but she was alive. The machine on her wrist, amid a royal survival module, blinked weakly, trying to restart her life functions. Ryan checked the readings. No movement in her legs. Pulse faint. He swallowed hard. Still breathing. That's something. He looked outside again. The wreckage of the eclipsed dawn floated all around them. Torn hulls, burning fragments, drifting bodies. But in the far distance, faint and flickering, was a single green light. The distress beacon of an old mining outpost. That was their only hope. He tore a piece of metal from the wall and began patching cracks in the airlock with whatever scraps he could find. His hands bled again. The Queen stirred weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "You should have left me." "Slave," Ryan didn't turn. "You already said that yesterday. You won't reach the beacon. It's too far." He tightened the metal clamp with a grunt. "Then we'll crawl." He found a small propulsion panel still working on the broken hull. It wasn't meant for travel, just for adjusting balance, but it could push them forward slowly. He attached the sled to the fragment, tied it around his waist again, and looked back at her. "Hang on, Your Majesty. The universe isn't done with you yet." The Queen gave a weak smile. "You think I fear death?" Ryan shrugged. "No, I think you fear dying alone." Her eyes widened slightly. She wanted to speak but couldn't. The silence between them said enough. He pressed the thruster. The hull creaked, then began to move, sliding through the emptiness. The stars drifted around them like ghosts. Each movement felt endless, each breath heavier than the last. For hours, maybe days, and they crawled through space. Rion's body ached, his muscles screamed, but he never stopped. The beacon was still far away, a fading promise. He used the wreckage's metal edges to push and steer, one slow shove after another. Sometimes he thought he heard voices, echoes of the dead crew. But it was only the whisper of space through the cracks. Once a shadow crossed over them. A scavenger drone, scanning for valuables. Ryan froze. The drone stopped above them, its red eye blinking. If it detected a human, it would destroy them. The Queen whispered, "Don't move." Ryan stayed still, heart pounding. The drone scanned the wreck, then drifted away. Only after it vanished did he allow himself to breathe again. He turned back to her. "Your people sure know how to build monsters." They were not. "My people anymore," she said weakly. Ryan frowned. "What does that mean?" But she closed her eyes, too weak to answer. He looked down at his chained wrists. The metal was cutting into his skin, but he couldn't break it. He almost laughed at the irony. Still a slave, even at the end of the world. After a while, he spoke softly, mostly to himself. "You know where I come from. We had a saying. A man is born in chains, but he dies free." I never believed it. Her voice came faintly. "Maybe you will." Her tone was different now, not commanding, not royal. Just human. It made Rian look at her again, and for the first time he didn't see a queen. He saw someone broken like him. He adjusted her position, covering her with what was left of the banner. "Don't talk. Save your strength." Hours later, the hull hit a small meteor field. The impact almost threw them off. The sled tore loose and the Queen began to slide toward open space. "Ryan," she gasped. He dove forward, catching her wrist just in time. His body hung halfway over the edge, nothing but emptiness below. The chain on his waist strained. Metal screamed. He pulled with everything he had. "I said," he grunted, dragging her back. "We're not done yet." Finally, he hauled her back onto the hull. They collapsed side by side, both gasping for air. The Queen stared at him in silence, eyes trembling. No words this time, only understanding. Ryan leaned back, staring at the stars. "We're close. I can feel it." She looked at him and whispered, "You're strange human," he smirked. "Takes one to know one." For the first time, she laughed, a faint, cracked laugh that echoed softly in the empty dark. The beacon's light blinked ahead, growing brighter. Hope flickered between them, fragile but real. Ryan checked the oxygen gauge and 3% left. He could barely stand. He tied the sled tighter, eyes fixed on that light. "Almost there," he whispered. "Just a little more." And as he crawled through the stars, a chained man dragging a broken queen across the ruins of her empire, even the universe seemed to watch in silence, waiting to see if this impossible story of defiance would end in death, or in something far greater. The beacon's light flickered brighter with every passing hour. Ryan's body moved like a machine, pull, push, drag, breathe, repeating until the pain became part of him. His fingers were cracked and bleeding, his vision blurred from lack of air. But he kept going. Behind him, the Queen was silent. Too silent. He turned his head and saw her eyes half open, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her breathing was shallow, mechanical almost. The survival module on her wrist was keeping her alive by sheer will of technology. "Stay awake," he said. His voice was rough, his throat dry. "We're almost there." She didn't respond. "Hey." He nudged her shoulder, panic creeping into his chest. "Don't die on me now. You're too stubborn for that." Her lips moved faintly. "You sound angry." "I am angry," he muttered. "You nobles always survive while the rest of us die trying to save you. But this time you're not leaving me behind." Her eyes opened wider, reflecting the dim glow of the beacon. You don't understand." "Then explain," he said. "Because I'm the idiot dragging you through space." There was a long silence. Only the low hum of the broken thruster filled the airlock. Then she finally whispered, "This wasn't an accident." Rion frowned. "The crash?" She nodded weakly. "My ship was sabotaged." He froze. "By who?" "By my own council," she said. "They feared me. Feared what I was about to do." Ryan's grip on the sled tightened. "And what was that?" Her voice cracked, filled with something he had never heard from her before. "Regret. End slavery. All of it." The words hit him like a punch. He turned to face her fully, eyes searching for any trace of a lie. "You?" he said. "You were going to end slavery?" "You're the reason I am a slave." Her gaze didn't waver. Before I was crowned. Before the council took control of my throne. Before they turned me into their voice." She coughed weakly, her whole body trembling. "I signed your colony's enslavement order, but the ink wasn't mine. My hand moved, but their implant made it so." Ryan stared, his anger fighting with disbelief. He had hated her for years. He had dreamed of this moment, the moment she would pay. Yet now she was telling him that even her crown had been a cage. "You expect me to believe that?" he asked. "You don't have to," she said softly. "But you should know this, they wanted me dead. And they'll want you dead too if they know you're with me." Ryan turned back toward the stars, trying to steady his breathing. "Then I won't let them find us?" The Queen looked at him surprised. "Why?" He gave a tired half-smile. "Because I'm too stubborn too." A faint laugh escaped her lips, weak but genuine. It echoed strangely in the empty hull. Then the moment was broken by a sudden beep from her wrist device. The survival module's energy was nearly gone. Rion checked the gauge, 2% power. If it failed, her heart would stop. He looked ahead. The beacon was close, maybe a few thousand meters now. He had no choice. "Hold on," he said. "This is going to hurt." He crawled out of the airlock and stepped onto the open hull again. The emptiness of space surrounded him, beautiful and deadly. He tied the Queen tighter to the sled and ignited the damaged thruster manually. The blast nearly threw him off. The hull shot forward, spinning through the debris field. Pieces of metal flew past like knives. One shard grazed his cheek, another tore through his sleeve. The oxygen alarm screamed, but the beacon grew larger. When the thruster finally gave out, they slammed into a floating wreck near the outpost. The impact knocked Ryan out for a few seconds. When he opened his eyes, everything hurt. The Queen's survival module blinked red. Power 1%. Not yet, he whispered. He dragged her through the cracked corridor of the wreck, searching for anything. A power source, a cable, a miracle. He found a half-dead droid, its chest flickering with faint blue energy. Without thinking, he tore out the power cell and pressed it against her module. Sparks flew. The smell of burning metal filled the air, then a sound. The soft, steady rhythm of her heart returning, Ryan exhaled. Still alive, great, you owe me twice now. Her eyes fluttered open. You risked your life. Again, he shrugged. Habit. Then he noticed something, and a mark under her collarbone, glowing faintly blue. A circuit-like symbol embedded beneath her skin. What's that? He asked. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. A control mark, placed there by the High Council. It lets them access my thoughts, my memories, my orders, even my body. Ryan's jaw clenched. So you're a slave too. She met his gaze, and for the first time there was no pride, no royal fire. Only sorrow. Yes, but my chains are made of gold. For a long time they sat in silence, two prisoners of different worlds united by the same broken freedom. Outside, the stars shifted. The mining beacon began transmitting a soft tone, a call across the void. But it wasn't just a rescue signal anymore. It had been hacked. Ryan didn't know it yet, but someone was already listening. Someone who wanted the Queen dead, and the human silenced forever. He stared at the blinking light and whispered, "We're not alone anymore." And in the dark void beyond, a shadow moved. The universe was never quiet. Even in silence, space whispered, the hum of radiation, the crackle of static, the faint heartbeat of dying stars. But that night, as Ryan stared into the endless dark from the hull of the wreck, the whispers turned into a growl. Something massive was coming. The mining beacon they had been crawling toward was now only a few kilometers away, a tiny, flickering green light on a black canvas. Ryan could almost taste hope. But when he looked up, he saw the stars bending unnaturally. A shimmering wall of blue light was forming across the horizon. At first he thought it was beautiful. Then he realized what it was. A void storm, a cosmic tempest of radiation and magnetic fire, strong enough to shred ships, melt armor, and erase minds. It was nature's way of reminding civilizations how small they truly were. "Queen," he shouted, ducking back into the broken cabin where she lay. "We've got a problem." Her eyes opened slowly, weak but alert. "The readings. I see it." Her royal implant flickered with faint data. "Void storm, high magnitude. If we stay exposed, we die within minutes." "Then we don't stay," Rion said, already scanning the wreck for anything usable. The ship's shields were gone. The metal walls groaned as the first waves of plasma energy licked across the hull. Sparks danced in the air. Ryan grabbed the emergency insulation panels and started sealing cracks around them. The Queen tried to speak. "You cannot," he cut her off. "I can. Just tell me where the control wires are." She blinked in disbelief. No one had ever interrupted her like that. Not a noble, not a guard, certainly not a human slave. But she didn't argue. The energy lines. Under the floor. Ryan pried open a panel and found the old generator core, half-burned, leaking energy. "If I connect this to the outer hull, maybe we can repel part of the radiation." "That's suicide," she said. He grinned. "I've been practicing that lately." Outside, the storm hit full force. The black sky turned electric blue. Waves of charged particles slammed against the hull, lighting up space like lightning in slow motion. The ship rocked violently. The Queen screamed as sparks rained down. "Ryan, it's collapsing." "Not yet." He jammed two cables together. A blinding flash filled the chamber. The generator whined, overloaded, but the hull shimmered with a faint barrier of light. The Queen's eyes widened. You stabilized it?" Ryan smiled faintly, though blood ran from his nose. For now, the storm raged harder. The energy field flickered, groaned, but held. The sound was deafening. Metal shrieking, space roaring, time itself trembling. The Queen tried to move her arm, but the paralysis still held her down. "You can't hold this forever." "I don't need forever," he said, crouching beside her. "Just long enough to get through." She stared at him, this filthy, scarred human who refused to die. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered again. Rian hesitated, then shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired of running from fate. Maybe saving you gives my life some kind of meaning. Or maybe I'm just stupid." The Queen's lips trembled, her eyes wet with something that looked almost like guilt. "You're not stupid, you're human." The word hung between them, heavier than the storm outside. Suddenly the floor buckled. A piece of hull tore away and the storm's plasma wind rushed in. Ryan barely managed to grab the Queen's sled before it was sucked toward open space. His boots slid on the metal. The air howled. He screamed over the chaos. "Hold on! I can't!" she cried, clutching the straps with paralyzed hands that couldn't tighten. He reached for her, his body half outside the ship now. The storm's light burned his skin, sparks flying around them like fireflies from hell. Then with one final pull, he dragged her back in. The hatch slammed shut, sealing the hole just as another wave of plasma slammed into the hull. They both lay there panting, the Queen trembling, Ryan coughing blood. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the storm's distant thunder filled the air. Finally, the Queen broke the silence. "Rian, my people never believed humans capable of such courage." He smirked weakly. "Guess they never met me." She looked at him with something new. Respect, maybe even affection. "You're a fool," she whispered. "But a brave one." He laughed softly, then leaned back against the wall. "I'll take that as a compliment, Your Majesty." The generator's light began to fade again. The storm wasn't over, and not yet. Through the narrow window, Ryan saw something moving in the blue chaos outside. Dark shapes, gliding silently through the plasma like shadows with wings. His heart skipped a beat. "We've got company." The Queen looked up, alarmed. "Void phantoms?" "No," Ryan said grimly, tightening his grip on a metal rod. "Those are ships." 3 small vessels emerged from the storm, their red insignia glowing, the mark of the Royal Council's hunters. "They found us," she whispered in horror. Ryan stood, blood still dripping from his chin, eyes fixed on the approaching lights. "Then they came to the wrong storm," he said coldly. Outside, lightning flashed across space, and the hunters began to descend. The storm had barely faded when the first shot hit. A bolt of plasma energy slammed into the wrecked hull, shaking it so violently that debris rained down like hail. Ryan barely managed to cover the Queen's body before a burst of flame scorched the wall behind them. The air filled with smoke and burning metal. "Enemy ships," Ryan muttered, coughing. 3 of them. "They're locking on." The Queen's voice was weak but steady. "Council hunters." "They must have traced my beacon." Ryan froze. "Your beacon?" Her eyes widened as realization struck her. The distress signal, it wasn't random. It was reprogrammed. They were never coming to rescue me. They were coming to finish what they started. Ryan's heart sank. "So they've been tracking us the whole time." She nodded grimly. "They wanted to be sure the storm finished us first. But when it didn't," she looked toward the window, where red lights flickered in the distance. "They came to do it themselves." Another impact rocked the wreck. The floor split beneath them. Ryan grabbed a handhold, anchoring the Queen's sled to a support beam. "They're boarding," he said. "I can see their clamps." "You can't fight them," she said. "They're soldiers. Trained assassins." He grinned through bleeding lips. "Good thing I'm bad at listening." He tore a piece of jagged metal from the wall, half a broken pipe, half a spear, and moved toward the airlock. His boots slid on the tilted floor, his muscles trembling with exhaustion. The Queen watched him, her lips trembling, torn between fear and pride. "Ryan," she called out, voice cracking. "If you die, they'll take me. They'll erase everything I stood for." He looked back at her, fire in his eyes. "Then I won't die." The airlock burst open with a hiss. 3 armored hunters stormed in, their helmets reflecting cold light. They carried pulse rifles glowing red. Their leader, a tall alien with silver skin, aimed straight at Ryan. "Step away from the Queen, human," the leader ordered, his voice metallic. "She's no longer of royal blood. She's property of the Council, just like you were." Ryan's jaw clenched. "I'm not property anymore," the soldier sneered. "You're still wearing chains." Ryan raised his chained wrists, smirked, and said, "Then I'll fight with them." Before the hunter could react, Ryan swung the chain across his faceplate, shattering the visor. Sparks exploded. The alien screamed as Rion kicked him backward into a console. The other two opened fire, plasma bolts slicing through the air. Ryan rolled behind a fallen beam, grabbed the broken spear, and hurled it through the smoke. It pierced one hunter's chest, pinning him to the wall. The last one rushed forward, blade drawn. Ryan blocked with the chain, sparks flying as metal struck metal. The two locked in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Rion was faster but weaker. The alien slammed him against the hull, trying to crush his throat. Ryan gasped for air, and in a desperate move pulled a live power wire from the wall and jammed it into the hunter's armor. A scream. Then silence. The alien dropped, smoking. Ryan fell to his knees, panting, his body trembling from shock and electricity. The Queen stared at him, speechless. "You fought them. Alone," she whispered. He coughed. "You keep saying that word like it means something." She smiled faintly, sadness in her eyes. "You are not alone, Ryan." Before he could reply, a sudden beep echoed from the console. He turned and froze. The beacon had reactivated on its own. A signal pulsed across the screen. "Location lock confirmed, Council fleet inbound." "They sent coordinates," Rion said, eyes narrowing. "Someone else is broadcasting your position." The Queen's face went pale. "No, that's impossible. The distress unit is destroyed." Ryan opened the data logs and saw a familiar code flashing on the monitor. The Queen's royal signature. "It's your implant," he said darkly. "They're controlling it remotely." Her voice broke. "They're inside my mind again." Her body shook violently. The glowing mark under her skin began to pulse with red light. She screamed in pain as blood ran from her nose. Ryan rushed to her side. "Hey, look at me." "Fight it. I can't," she gasped. "They're rewriting my thoughts." Her hand reached toward him, trembling. "Kill me, before they use me." Rian grabbed her face gently, forcing her to look at him. "Not happening. You hear me? Not while I'm breathing." He looked around desperately, then spotted a medical injector and a supply kit. He ripped out the stabilizer serum and injected it into her neck. The glow under her skin dimmed slightly. Her body stopped shaking. The Queen's breathing steadied. "You stopped it." "For now." Ryan exhaled, his hands trembling. "We need to cut that signal completely. There's a way," she whispered weakly. "If you overload the implant's link, it'll burn the connection but it might kill me." He looked into her eyes, tired, strong, and full of something new. "Trust." "I'll take that chance," he said. "Because I don't save people to watch them die." She smiled faintly. "Then hurry." Ryan connected a power conduit to the implant interface, his hands shaking as sparks flew. He whispered, "Come on, come on." A flash of white light burst through the chamber. The Queen screamed, the sound raw and human, and then collapsed into his arms. The mark on her neck faded completely. The console went dark. Ryan held her, terrified she was gone. But then a weak heartbeat. He smiled, tears mixing with soot. "Still here, stubborn as ever." She looked up at him, whispering through trembling lips, "You saved me again." He chuckled softly, starting to lose count. Outside, thunder rumbled through space. The void storm was clearing, revealing the outline of something enormous in the distance. A battleship. The royal fleet. The Queen's eyes widened. If that's the loyalists, we're saved. But if it's the Council? Ryan stared at the massive shadow approaching. The red insignia glowed across its hull. "Yeah," he said grimly. "That's no rescue." He looked down at her, tightening his grip on the chain around his wrist. "Then I guess we fight again." The Queen managed a faint smile. Together this time. Outside, the enemy fleet loomed closer, blotting out the stars. The wreck shook as power cores ignited. The storm was over, but the war was just beginning. The air inside the wreck grew hot and heavy. The hull creaked under pressure as the enormous Council battleship came closer, casting its shadow across the dying wreck. The red insignia on its front glowed like a wound in space. Ryan watched through the cracked viewport, jaw tight. The Queen sat beside him, pale but conscious. Her implant was burned out now, replaced by a faint scar. She was free, but surrounded. "They're charging weapons," Ryan said quietly. The Queen's expression hardened. "They won't fire yet. They want me alive. To make an example. Then they'll be disappointed." He turned away and began tightening the chains around his wrists, making crude grips for his hands. His body ached from every fight, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The Queen tilted her head slightly. You can't fight a fleet, Ryan, he gave her a half-smile. Then I'll make them remember the man who tried. She tried to argue, but the words died in her throat. There was something about his defiance, something even her royal pride couldn't challenge. He wasn't fighting for power or glory. He was fighting because he couldn't do anything else. Because humans didn't kneel to cruelty. Not anymore. Ryan climbed toward the outer hatch. Through the cracked window, space shimmered, calm now after the storm. But that calm was a lie. 3 assault shuttles detached from the battleship and moved toward them. Soldiers in dark armor lined the decks, ready to finish what the hunters had failed. The Queen whispered, "They'll destroy everything. The ship, the beacon, us." "Then I'll destroy their faith first," Ryan said, slamming the hatch open. The vacuum tore at his suit, but he ignored it. He climbed onto the outer hull, gravity boots locking to the metal. The void stretched endlessly beneath him, beautiful, silent, merciless. He stood there, a single human against the universe, holding nothing but a broken metal spear and his chain. As the first shuttle approached, he whispered under his breath, "Come and take her if you dare." The first blast hit. Plasma streaked past him, burning the air. Ryan dodged and rolled across the hull, the chain whipping around him like a serpent. He swung it toward a soldier landing on the wreck, wrapping it around the alien's leg and pulling hard. The soldier screamed, flung off into the void. More landed. Ryan fought them one by one, brutal, fast, efficient. Every hit he took only fueled his rage. Sparks flashed across the dark like lightning. Inside the ship, the Queen struggled to move, dragging herself toward a shattered control console. Her hands trembled as she reactivated a nearby comm unit. Her neural implant was gone, but her voice still carried authority. "This is Queen Aurelia of the Zenthari Empire," she said, her voice echoing across the emergency frequency. "To all loyal ships still within range, the Council has turned against the Crown. They are not rescuers. They are murderers." Static crackled. No response. She repeated it again, louder this time, her tone rising. "This is your Queen, alive and betrayed. If there is any honor left in the stars, prove it now." Outside, Ryan's fight raged on. He grabbed a fallen soldier's rifle and fired wildly into the second shuttle's viewport. The ship veered, losing balance. One of its engines exploded, scattering debris into space. Ryan ducked behind the hull as the explosion washed over him. His suit tore, blood seeping into the seams. His breath came ragged and shallow. The Queen's voice reached his comm. "Ryan, fall back inside. You can't hold them." He smiled faintly. "You're right. I can't." He looked down at the power conduit, running along the hull, the one he had used earlier to stabilize the ship during the void storm. Dangerous idea formed. In his mind, he disconnected the chain from his wrist and attached it to the conduit. The metal glowed red-hot. Energy pulsed through it like lightning waiting to be unleashed. He looked up at the approaching soldiers, their visors reflecting his image, one bloodied, broken human, standing on the wreck of their empire's pride. "For every human you enslaved," he whispered, "and for every life you burned." He raised the glowing chain and slammed it into the hull. A surge of white-blue energy exploded outward, arcing across the wreck. The shockwave struck the assault shuttles, frying their systems instantly. Engines failed. Weapons died. The ship spun out of control, crashing into each other in a storm of fire and debris. Inside the wreck, alarms screamed. The Queen shielded her eyes as the entire ship lit up. The energy burst spread across the void like wings of lightning. When the light faded, silence returned. The Council's shuttles were gone, reduced to fragments drifting in space. The wreck was barely holding together. The Queen crawled to the viewport, searching desperately for him. "Ryan," she called out. At first there was nothing. Then a movement, a shape. He was still standing on the hull, surrounded by fire and glowing wreckage, breathing heavily but alive. The Queen's eyes filled with tears. "You mad, beautiful fool?" she whispered. Ryan tapped the side of his helmet, his voice weak but clear through the comm. "You still there, Your Majesty?" "I'm here," she replied softly. He chuckled. "Good, because I'm not done yet." Before she could ask what he meant, the ship's sensors beeped, a new signal. Not red, gold. The loyal fleet had arrived. A dozen royal ships emerged from hyperspace, their insignia shining bright. They had heard her call. The Queen stared at the view, speechless. "They came..." Ryan smiled faintly. Told you your voice still mattered. The loyal fleet surrounded the wreck, opening comms with her directly. Your Majesty, this is Admiral Trask. We received your message. We're taking you home. She turned to look at Ryan, still standing against the stars. No, she whispered. You're taking us home. Outside, Ryan stood on the burning hull, watching the enemy fleet retreat into the dark. His body trembled from exhaustion, but his heart was steady. He had fought for her, for freedom. And somehow, against every law of the universe, he had won. As the Queen's rescue ship extended a beam of light toward him, Ryan whispered to himself, "Guess even slaves can change the stars." And for the first time in his life, he smiled, not as a prisoner, not as a soldier, but as a free man standing on the edge of forever. When the loyal fleet's rescue beam reached the shattered hull, the light looked almost holy. It wrapped around Ryan's body, a soft golden glow cutting through the endless dark. He was barely standing now. His suit was torn, his chest bleeding, his strength fading, but he didn't care. As the beam pulled him toward the waiting ship, he looked down one last time at the burning wreck beneath him, the tomb of the old world. The storm was gone. The hunters were gone. The silence of space finally felt peaceful. Inside the flagship, medics rushed to receive him. They lowered him gently onto a stretcher. His vision blurred, his hearing faded, but before darkness took him, he heard her voice. "Ryan, you made it." That was enough. When he woke again, everything felt unreal. The air was warm, the lights soft. The sound of engines purred beneath him like a heartbeat. He blinked, confused, realizing he was lying in a royal med bay, the same kind of place once forbidden to humans. His wounds were sealed, his breathing steady. Then he saw her. Queen Aurelia sat beside his bed, dressed in simple white robes instead of royal armor. Her crown was gone. Her face, once distant and cold, now carried the quiet strength of someone who had seen the truth and survived it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ryan smirked faintly. "So, did we win?" She smiled softly. "You did." He tried to sit up, but she gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Rest, the council fleet is gone. The loyalists returned in time. You saved me. And the throne." He frowned. "I didn't save a throne. I saved a person." Her eyes glimmered. "That's why the throne still exists." He looked around the room. Polished metal walls, banners of the Zenthari Empire hanging in quiet dignity. "Funny," he muttered. "I spent half my life dreaming of burning those banners down. And now?" she asked. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Now I don't care about banners. I just want to see the stars without chains." She hesitated, then reached into a small case beside her chair. From it, she pulled a silver medallion, simple, circular, engraved with both human and Zenthari symbols. "This," she said quietly, "is the seal of liberation, once given only to generals and heroes of the Empire." She held it out toward him. "But today I give it to a slave, who dragged a queen through death itself." Rion stared at it, speechless. "You're serious?" "I am." Her voice trembled slightly. "You didn't just save me. You reminded me who I was supposed to be." He took the medallion carefully, staring at the reflection of his scarred face in its polished surface. "Never thought I'd get paid in freedom," she smiled. "Freedom isn't payment, Rion, it's the beginning." Later that day, the Queen addressed her people for the first time since the betrayal. Across hundreds of ships, holograms lit up, Zenthari and humans alike listening in silence. She stood tall, her voice strong but warm. "Today we rise from ashes. The council is no more. The crown will no longer be forged in chains. From this day onward, no being, human or alien, shall be owned." The crowd erupted across the fleet. Cheers, tears, disbelief. Generations of silence broke in one moment. Ryan stood at the back of the room, watching quietly. He didn't cheer. He just smiled, proud, tired, at peace. When the speech ended, she turned toward him. Their eyes met across the hall. She didn't speak, but her look said everything. "This victory is yours too." That evening, as the fleet drifted near a quiet nebula, Ryan stood alone on the observation deck. The stars shimmered against the glass, painting him in silver light. He held the medallion in his hand, turning it over and over. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt human. The Queen walked in silently behind him. Leaving without saying goodbye? He chuckled. Didn't want to ruin the royal party. You're not leaving as a slave, she said. You're leaving as a free man and a friend. He turned toward her. Then maybe friends should part on equal ground. He knelt, not in submission, but in gratitude. Thank you for keeping your promise, she smiled. Thank you for reminding me what promises mean. Then she pressed a small data card into his palm. Coordinates. There's a small planet, quiet, unclaimed. You'll like it. Warm air, blue seas. No orders, he raised an eyebrow. You're giving me a planet? A home, she corrected gently. Something no one could ever take again. He laughed softly. Guess even queens can surprise me. She leaned forward, her hand brushing his for a second. Farewell, Ryan. May the stars never chain you again. He gave her a final salute, not as a soldier, but as an equal. And may your crown never weigh you down. The doors closed behind him, and for a moment she stood there alone, smiling through tears. Hours later, a small shuttle left the fleet, its engines humming quietly. Inside, Ryan sat in the pilot's seat, staring at the sea of stars ahead. He reached up, unclipped his old chains from his wrist and let them float into space. They drifted slowly, catching the light. Two broken links glinting like fallen stars before vanishing into the dark. He smiled, whispering to himself, free at last. As his ship vanished into hyperspace, Queen Aurelia watched from her window, a faint tear rolling down her cheek. But her heart light. For the first time in her reign, her empire was no longer built on fear, but on hope. And somewhere out in the vast, endless galaxy, one human slave, the man who defied empires, was finally free.